Donald Trump has spent his entire political life obsessed with a deal, the handshake, the photo op, the gold-plated signature on a meaningless piece of paper. In his world, substance is optional. Spectacle is everything. It's not about real outcomes. It's about looking like a winner. So when he slapped a brutal 35% tariff on Canadian exports earlier this year, he thought he was making a power move. He thought Prime Minister Mark Carney would crack under pressure, that Canada would come crawling back to the negotiating table with concessions in hand. Trump envisioned another ceremony on the White House lawn, another empty agreement, another cheap headline. But instead, what he got was silence, resistance, and eventually humiliation. Because while
if you're done watching corrupt elites rig the system and leave you behind, subscribe now. If you want real talk, raw truth, and zero spin, this is your channel. If you're ready to fight back, hit that subscribe button and stand with us.
Because while Trump threw his tantrum, Carney built a fortress. Let's not forget what Trump's deal-making really is. It's all about domination. It's performance. He rolls out tariffs without plans, announces policies without details, and poses for photos while entire industries burn in the background. His trade playbook is as chaotic as his Twitter feed. Punish first, maybe talk later, definitely lie to the cameras. And yet he somehow believed that Canada, a G7 country, a democratic powerhouse, and a major player in global supply chains, would be bullied into submission like some reality TV contestant. The man who thinks diplomacy is a WWE promo didn't realize he was up against someone who doesn't play games. Mark Carney didn't respond to Trump's drama with counter-drama. He didn't take the bait. There were no flashy pressers, no angry sound bites, no race to the bottom. Instead, Carney rolled out a cold, methodical, brilliantly boring strategy. Quiet meetings with European leaders, trade missions to Southeast Asia, accelerated LNG export plans to Asia-Pacific partners, domestic protection for key industries, emergency funds for impacted workers. And through it all, one clear message: Canada will not be intimidated, and we will not be manipulated. While Trump's White House was busy orchestrating theatrical meltdowns, Canada was building long-term economic resilience. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it worked. Trump's failure here isn't just that he lost the trade war, it's that he misunderstood what war he was even fighting. He assumed this was a media contest, a shouting match, a chest-thumping spectacle. But Carney wasn't fighting for a headline. He was fighting for Canada's independence. And he knew something Trump never will. Markets don't care about optics. They care about stability. Real investors, real businesses, real economies don't want volatile blowhards throwing tariffs around like confetti. They want predictability. They want rules. They want governments that understand how global supply chains work. And guess what? They saw that in Canada, not the United States. Under Carney's leadership, Canada didn't flinch. It fortified. Trade deals with Europe were tightened. Export lanes were diversified. And potash, Canada's silent powerhouse in the fertilizer market, became a diplomatic lever, not a vulnerability. While Trump kept talking about punishing Canada, Carney made sure that Canadian potash wasn't just going to American farms. It was being rerouted to Asia, where demand was exploding. That's not a tweet. That's not a press stunt. That's real economic power being recalibrated in real time. Meanwhile, the U.S. suffered hard. In May and June alone, U.S. job losses started to spike in sectors that relied on Canadian imports. Manufacturing output dropped. Agriculture futures grew unstable. And quietly, but unmistakably, border towns began to go dark. Canadian consumers, once regular visitors to American stores, gas stations, and restaurants, stopped coming. Trade volumes shrank. Revenue collapsed. And still, Trump stood in front of cameras talking about how America is winning. It was the same delusion that's defined his entire presidency. The belief that as long as he looks powerful, the truth doesn't matter. But here's what Carney did that truly flipped the game. He didn't play it at all. He built an alternative. Canada stopped asking for exemptions. It stopped waiting for the U.S. to change. And it started building around Trump, not through confrontation, but through evolution. New partnerships, stronger supply chains, smarter investments. And now, as Trump's economy limps and his inner circle begs Canada to re-enter talks, Carney holds the cards. Why? Because he never sold out his country's values for a photo op. He never bent to threats. And he never let the drama distract from the mission, protecting Canada's workers, industries, and sovereignty. And let's be real, Canadians are tired of drama. They're tired of leaders who trade dignity for attention. They want policy, not pyrotechnics. They want strength, not spectacle. And Carney gave them that, not with viral moments, but with quiet competence. While Trump made every international relationship about him, Carney made every decision about Canada. And that's why, right now, Carney is not just weathering Trump's tantrums. He's outmaneuvering them. The moral difference between these two leaders is just as stark. Trump's trade war isn't about fairness. It's about feeding his need for control. It's about proving dominance, punishing independence, and forcing allies to grovel. But Canada refused. And in doing so, it set an example for the world. You don't have to sacrifice your values to stay in the game. Trump's tariffs backfired because they were never about trade. They were about ego. And egos don't build economies. They destroy them. Just ask the farmers in Iowa who can't afford fertilizer because Canadian potash is being sent elsewhere. Ask the manufacturers in Michigan facing material shortages. Ask the border towns watching their lifeblood dry up while Trump brags about winning. It's not a win. It's economic sabotage disguised as strategy. And Canada didn't just survive it. Canada rose above it. Because Carney's strategy wasn't just reaction, it was protection. Protection for workers who rely on exports. Protection for industries that keep rural towns alive. Protection for long-term economic growth that doesn't hinge on the personality cult of whoever's president. Carney looked beyond the daily headlines and built a fireproof economy, one that can endure American volatility and emerge stronger. And now, the shift is undeniable. The U.S. is asking for talks. They're quietly dispatching envoys, floating proposals, offering to reassess the tariffs that started this mess. But Carney's not in a rush. Why should he be? Canada's trade diversification is already delivering results. The pain of decoupling was real, but temporary. What's being built in its place is lasting. A network of trade built not on dependency, but on mutual respect. And this is the final irony. Trump, the self-proclaimed master negotiator, is now the one begging for a deal, not because he wants Canada's friendship, but because he needs it. His economy is bleeding, his base is angry, and his illusion of power is crumbling. Carney doesn't need to gloat. He doesn't need to humiliate. He just needs to hold firm. Because for once, Canada is reacting to American chaos. It's dictating terms. The message is clear. You don't win by dominating allies. You win by earning trust. And Trump, in all his arrogance, forgot that. He thought he could bully Canada into submission. What he did instead was wake up a country that knows exactly who it is and refuses to be told otherwise. So now, as the dust settles, one thing is certain. Trump's era of spectacle is running out of steam. And Canada, under Carney's steady hand, is rising, stronger, more independent, and more respected than ever. Because in the end, it wasn't the loudest voice that won. It was the calmest, the most prepared, the most principled. Trump begged for a deal. Carney built a better future instead. And now the world sees the results. What Trump tried to package as a grand gesture of strength has unraveled into a slow-motion economic collapse, one rooted in ego and made worse by incompetence. He imposed a 35% tariff on Canadian goods, thinking he could pressure Canada into submission, imagining that Mark Carney would blink first. But what he didn't understand, what he never understands, is that real leadership isn't about volume. It's about endurance, discipline, long-game strategy. And Canada's Prime Minister played him like a fiddle. Let's look at the actual scoreboard. While Trump was busy boasting about winning the trade war, Canada was sealing multi-decade deals with Asia. Potash exports, the very heart of Trump's pressure strategy, are now being rerouted and reserved for new allies. LNG terminals on Canada's coast are under construction or expansion, preparing to deliver energy directly to Asian markets, bypassing volatile American infrastructure, and removing one more piece of leverage from the U.S. toolbox. Trump wanted to isolate Canada. What he did was push it into the arms of the rest of the world. Carney didn't just resist. He redefined Canada's role on the global stage. No longer the quiet neighbor waiting for approval. Canada has stepped into a new era of assertiveness, but it's an assertiveness rooted in integrity. Unlike Trump's scorcher diplomacy, Carney's model is cooperative, reliable, and values-driven. And that's why it's working. Countries trust Canada. Businesses trust Canada. Investors trust Canada. Because when push came to shove, Canada didn't panic. It stood tall. Meanwhile, in the United States, trust is evaporating. Business leaders are fed up with policy made by tantrum. Farmers are furious. Retailers are hurting. American jobs are being lost, not because of foreign competition, but because Trump sabotaged his own supply lines. And now, as that reality crashes down, Trump is trying to claw his way back to the negotiating table. Not with humility, of course. That would require self-awareness. But through desperation disguised as new terms. His people are calling it a realignment, a reassessment. But it's none of that. It's a collapse. The strongman routine failed, and now he wants a reset. But Carney isn't giving him one. Because Canada doesn't need a reset. Canada didn't break anything. Trump did. And now the damage belongs to him. That's the lesson Trump and his allies still haven't learned. You can't build trust through fear. You can't build alliances through punishment. And you sure as hell can't run a 21st century economy like a reality show. Canada showed what happens when a country refuses to be humiliated. It showed that being the quieter power doesn't mean being the weaker one. In fact, Carney's quiet, calculated defiance exposed just how hollow Trump's bluster really is. And what makes all this even more powerful is that Carney never made it personal. He didn't retaliate out of spite. He didn't insult. He didn't escalate. He simply refused to play Trump's game. That refusal, measured, principled, and strategic, is exactly why Canada came out stronger. Think about what it says to the world. That when pushed, Canada won't crumble, it will calculate. It won't fight fire with fire, it will build a firewall. And when chaos reigns elsewhere, Canada will be the country you can count on. In an age where strong men dominate headlines, Carney proved there's a different kind of strength, one that doesn't need to scream to be heard. Even domestically, the shift is being felt. Canadians have rallied around this leadership, not out of blind patriotism, but out of recognition. They see what's happening. They see the difference between drama and discipline, and they're responding. Confidence in the government has surged, not because Carney gave them easy answers, but because he told them the truth, because he asked for their patience, and because he showed them results. And make no mistake, those results are real. New trade deals, stable investment, growth in strategic industries, and perhaps most importantly, a new generation of Canadians who understand that sovereignty isn't a slogan. It's a structure, one that has to be protected, invested in, and never traded away for short-term comfort. Contrast that with Trump's base, which has been left holding the bag once again. American workers who were promised greatness are now watching their livelihoods vanish. Farmers who trusted Trump to defend them are now begging for federal assistance. And businesses that once expanded under NAFTA are now laying people off. This isn't winning. This is economic arson, lit by a president more obsessed with applause and outcomes. But here's the moment that sealed it, when Trump, visibly flustered, started hinting that maybe Canada's being unfair, that maybe we need to have a serious talk. He wasn't projecting strength anymore. He was projecting loss. He looked like a man who realized too late that he backed the wrong play. And Carney? Carney didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He just reiterated the truth. Canada will continue to pursue policies in the best interest of our people and our economy, guided by principle, not pressure. That's not just a statement. That's a doctrine. And it's one the world is watching, because the global landscape is shifting. The old model, where the U.S. threw its weight around and everyone else flinched, is breaking, and countries are looking for new templates. What Carney offered wasn't just a response to a crisis. It was a new playbook, One built on independence, resilience, and purpose, and it's catching on. Look at the way European allies responded. Trade talks with Canada accelerated. Joint statements were issued supporting Canada's right to defend its sovereignty. Asian partners rushed to sign deals. Canada went from a target of economic aggression to a symbol of democratic resilience, not by force, not by retaliation, but by remaining grounded when the storm hit. And that's what flipped the game. Trump tried to play power politics. Carney redefined the power. In the coming months, the pressure on the Trump administration will only grow. Economic indicators are heading in the wrong direction. Supply chains are still fractured. And Canada isn't coming back to the old table. It's building a new one, with new partners, new priorities, and new protections. The Trump team can send all the envoys they want. But Canada's message is unchanged. We're not trading dignity for access. Carney's refusal to strike a deal under pressure isn't stubbornness, it's strategy. And it's already paying off. Because now, any future engagement will be on equal footing. No more assumptions about Canadian obedience. No more fake negotiations from a position of manufactured weakness. Trump can rage, spin, and beg, but he doesn't get to dictate terms anymore. And that's the real win here. Not just for Canada, but for every nation watching. Carney didn't just offend Canadian interests. He showed the world how to survive in the shadow of a superpower gone rogue. He showed that economic strength isn't about bullying. It's about building. That dignity is not a liability. It's a foundation. And that when faced with a storm of bluster and bile, calm courage can carry a nation forward. Trump may have wanted a deal. What he got instead was a lesson. And now, as his administration stumbles, as the consequences mount, and as his public support phrase, there's no reset button. There's only the long, hard reality of what he's broken. Canada, under Carney, will keep moving forward. Quietly, strategically, on its own terms. That's the real headline. Trump begged for a win. Carney built a future. And the future Carney is building isn't one based on retaliation or chest-thumping nationalism. It's built on self-reliance, strategic diversification, and a deep belief in democratic values. He understood something Trump never could. That true strength isn't about issuing threats. It's about staying calm under pressure and acting in the long-term interest of your people. Carney didn't need to scream about sovereignty or wave a flag at every press conference. He quietly made sovereignty real by refusing to let Canadian policy be dictated by a foreign president's tantrums. What Trump tried to do with his tariff wasn't new. It was classic strongman behavior. Pick a fight, create chaos, declare dominance, and demand surrender. And when he didn't get what he wanted, he grew desperate. He tried economic coercion. He tried diplomatic freezing. He even tried political isolation, refusing to engage directly with Carney for months. But none of it worked, because Canada didn't cave, and Carney didn't blink. Instead, Carney doubled down on what matters: protecting Canadian industries, defending Canadian workers, and investing in Canada's future. His administration made it clear that no deal, no matter how urgent, would come at the cost of integrity. There would be no one-sided concessions, no hollow treaties, no performative apologies. Canada would not participate in a theatrical reconciliation. It would wait until the United States was ready to act like a real partner again. And when that moment comes, and it will come, it won't be Trump dictating terms. It'll be Canada sitting at the table as an equal, not a subordinate. That's the new reality Trump created with his failed gamble. He thought he was flexing muscle. What he actually did was drive Canada to discover just how powerful it already was when it stood on its own feet. And this isn't just a political or economic shift. It's a psychological one, too. For years, Canadians were conditioned to believe their prosperity hinged on proximity to the United States. That trade with the U.S. was not just beneficial, but necessary. That any disruption in the relationship would spell disaster. Trump's reckless trade war shattered that illusion, and Carney used opportunity to prove a different truth. That Canada has options. That Canada has value. And that Canada, when backed into a corner, doesn't retreat. It repositions. Now, Canadian companies are rethinking supply chains. Government funding is flowing toward infrastructure that connects not just north and south, but east and west, across oceans, not just borders. Exporters who once relied on American buyers are discovering eager new markets in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa. Carney's government has turned crisis into catalyst, accelerating Canada's economic evolution in ways that would have taken a decade under normal conditions. And through it all, Carney has never lost sight of the human impact. While Trump weaponized trade for headlines, Carney made sure support went directly to workers and communities facing disruption. Emergency programs were launched to stabilize sectors most affected by the tariffs. Federal investments were made in clean tech, manufacturing, and agricultural innovation to future-proof vulnerable industries. And instead of demanding gratitude for basic governance, as Trump so often does, Carney simply did his job, quietly, effectively, without spectacle. Trump begged for a deal. Carney built a future. And in doing so, he changed the game for good.